Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden, breaking down tonight's five-game Tuesday slate. Pretty unappealing five-game Tuesday slate, of course. Everything kind of seems unappealing when you look at Boogie's line from last night.
Yeah, that was a rather massive line. I just got to say, I think we need to air out some grievances here. Like I told you, I was not feeling very well when we started talking about the slate, and you just called me out and told me I was faking it and was pointing all these fingers and blaming me and all this stuff. And there's just so much tension between the two of us. I think our listeners and watchers need to know that there's a lot of grievances between the two of us right now.
There are, I told you, all you care about is your whiteboard behind you. That's what you put your effort into. It's affected your work on the pods. And yeah, you said you're not going to change it. So here we are.
Yeah, you're just going to have to deal with it.
Sacramento, Orlando here tonight. Sacramento on a back-to-back, which means they rest everyone over 50, which there are a few options that will come back and a few options that will sit here.
Yeah, the problem is apparently I saw a tweet yesterday that they actually have a schedule for their veterans resting, but they're just not going to tell anybody what that schedule is outside of the people that are actually resting. So we're never going to know ahead of time. That being said, I believe it was Carter that played last night and Costa Kufis that played. So I would expect those two to sit, and we probably see Zach Randolph come back. We might get George Hill resting, so that'll be something that we can probably take advantage of. But looking at this slate, this is probably the most appealing game on the slate, and that's telling you something considering it's the two worst teams in the NBA.
And you mentioned Randolph possibly coming back. I don't think it's going to make me shy away from still using Scala here or still using Willie Cauley-Stein. Willie Cauley-Stein had a rough night last night, but I'm willing to go back to the well with these guys. I think Willie Cauley-Stein's an interesting GPP option. I won't go there in cash because I prefer Adams at a similar price, but he's going to be a guy that I still want some exposure to in this spot.
Yeah, Scala this year has been a guy that's been in my lineups a lot recently, and he's been carrying me to glory, even though 300 fantasy points on DraftKings didn't cash for me last night. But yeah, I'm going to continue to use him. It's an excellent spot against Orlando here. They have been better of late against centers. They're down to 21st in the NBA in fantasy points allowed, but over the last 10 games, their defensive efficiency has been fairly solid. They're at 19th, but yeah, I'm still going to take this guy coming off a game where he had 15 field goal attempts, had 23 points. You mentioned Zach Randolph possibly being back. That could eat into his production a little bit, but it's not like Randolph's going to come out and play 30 minutes. If he's back tonight, it's 14, 15 minutes. That's still plenty of minutes for Scal. I do like him a significant amount, and I think he'll be a good option here if he's coming off the bench. If he's back in the starting lineup, I will be less interested, but if he is coming off the bench, I do like him a lot.
Yep. As far as the guards go, you mentioned George Hill possibly sitting tonight. I don't think he matters too much for me. Still really like De'Aaron Fox. Once again, he's been continuing to be around that 32-minute mark over his last five. Fantasy point production has been solid. Still pretty cheap on DraftKings. He's 5,200. FanDuel, this is probably going to be an ongoing thing. He's 5,700 there. Not too bad, but basically everyone is more overpriced over on FanDuel than DraftKings.
Yeah, if you look at FanDuel pricing, with exception to a couple players, everybody is overpriced on FanDuel. Let's just get that out of the way early. Everybody on FanDuel is overpriced. You're just gonna have to deal with that and accept that, guys may not reach whatever antiquated value threshold that you have in mind for them tonight. But given the matchup here against Orlando, De'Aaron Fox probably one of the safest plays on the board at point guard on any site, outside of a couple other guys that we're going to get to later on. But matchup is outstanding. Production has been solid recently. You're looking at a guy that at his price is going to come out and have a decent shot at putting up upwards of 35 fantasy points. So I don't really see a reason to fade him. Even in tournaments, he's going to be chalky, but sometimes you just have to eat the chalk and move on. Outside of him, I did write up Buddy Hield in the tournament. article today coming off a solid game against Charlotte. Look, he's been over 28 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Again, another guy that I prefer if he's coming off the bench, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But double-digit field goal attempts in 3 of the last 4. Shooting hasn't been great. But against an Orlando team that really can't defend shooting guards or spot up shooters, I think this is a spot where he comes out and puts up a solid game.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then, if you have the extra cash, obviously Bogdanovich is a guy that you can look at as well. Just been super consistent. Both those guys, I mean, we've said it overpriced on FanDuel, but like DraftKings, those guys are excellent steals at their prices there. I mean, only 5,500. He's coming to his own. He's shooting lights out of late. I'll go back to the well all day.
Yeah, I've mentioned it several times. He's outside of he actually is the team's I think best ball handler. Sorry, Darren Fox, but like if you want to go that route, like he's an excellent option in cash games and tournaments. Coming off a terrible outing against Charlotte, but I expect him to bounce back tonight.
Yep. We mentioned Zach Randolph. He's the guy who the minutes really aren't there. I don't think he's going to be able to reach what we kind of need out of him at 15, 18 minutes of him on this slate.
No, you're not looking there tonight.
Anyone else from Sacramento?
No.
On the Orlando side of things, some of these guys I do like here. I like the guards. I think they're at really nice prices. I mean, Elfrid Payton's always a reasonable GPP option. He's been playing better of late. 6,900 on DraftKings. It's not a bad price tag for him. He's 7,100. There's still kind of a clear-cut difference. And really, point guard is not that. There's not a ton of options on this slate. It's really top-heavy.
Yeah, he's a guy that I do think you can use in all formats. I think I prefer him a little bit more in tournaments, just given the volatility that comes with using Elfrid Payton. But again, against a Sacramento team that does struggle to defend wings, and they also do struggle to defend in the paint. So you expect him to be able to not only put up a decent amount of scoring, but also rack up the peripherals, rebounds, and assists. So he's fine. I think out of the guys from the Orlando backcourt that I like the most is going to be Evan Fournier. He's a guy, again, Sacramento really struggles against shooting guards this season. 29th over in defensive efficiency over the last 10 days. He's a guy that I do have a significant amount of interest in.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think next for me is Biyombo, especially on DraftKings, 2 center format. There's just not a lot of center options that I'm completely in love with. Like I like kind of sticking in that mid range with Willie Cauley-Stein, with Adams, with Biyombo. I think he's an excellent side. I do think the upside can be there tonight as well, just given the fact that the Kings front court just absolutely bleeds fantasy points, and obviously he has that block shot upside as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no to Biyombo here. Interesting to note, someone pointed out to me the height advantage that Willie Cauley-Stein has on Biyombo tonight. I think it's like about 4 inches. That being said, Biyombo has like an 8-foot wingspan compared to Willie Cauley-Stein's like 7'3" wingspan, I think is what he was measured at during his draft workout. That's a pretty significant like wingspan difference. Like this is a spot where you would expect Biyombo to come out and be able to put up one of his like massive games here. You're looking at probably 12, 14 rebounds here out of him tonight. And then double-digit points. So I would not fade Biyombo here in cash or tournaments.
What do you think of Aaron Gordon? Like field goal attempts have been through the roof. Minutes are, up over 35 in each of the last 4 games. It's been pretty solid. Like I think he's got a safe floor here. He's just a little bit pricey, I guess. Like he took a big price hike, I think about 500 from where he was last time against Boston. Even on his poor shooting nights, like he's still putting up around 30 fantasy points.
Tournaments only, like you're definitely looking other places, especially at his price across the industry. Like you're still looking at like LaMarcus and Cash and Biyombo and some of these other guys, but I definitely think he's a solid tournament option.
Yep. Anyone else from Orlando that you're looking at? Jonathan Simmons at all?
If you need a value option, sure. I think Kim Birch is also a little bit interesting on DraftKings. He's a guy, again, minutes not like significantly high, like 17, 19 over the last 2, but he has been working his way into the rotation, and given Sacramento's inability to defend on the glass, like I think he's a guy that could come out and put up a double-double in those limited minutes.
Anyone else to talk about here?
No.
Cleveland and San Antonio. The circus of Cleveland's coming into San Antonio tonight. I don't know what to expect out of this game. It really as a whole, like this could be potentially one of the ugliest games I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty telling. Let's see. Let me go back a page here to look at the Vegas line. Um, San Antonio entered this game as favorites, and they were sitting Pau Gasol, Rudy Gay, Kawhi Leonard, and Manu Ginobili. That's telling you something here. That being said, the line has actually moved. Cleveland is now 1 point favorite, but yeah, it's kind of interesting here. I'll make it really easy. LeBron is probably the only Cavalier you're looking at. Period. Uh, Isaiah Thomas is fine in tournaments, and Kevin Love is fine in tournaments. And you're not looking at anyone else from Cleveland. Like, you're just fading that situation. LeBron's probably going to come out, be pissed off, and just absolutely smash, but not the greatest of matchups for him. So there is that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think LeBron basically is the only Cav that I'm looking at here. Like, Thomas at 6K, like, sure, in tournaments, Love fine in tournaments. Like, I just kind of the Love thing. I don't want to use him tonight. Like, he's that one. Like, if you're building a ton of lineups, like, I'm fine with it. I'm not even completely sold on LeBron tonight either. Like, I think I'm going to be going some other directions, just money wise. Like, I'm going to be paying up elsewhere. I don't mind him. Like, there's no Kawhi here. Like, he's going to deal with Kyle Anderson, which sure, that's fine. Yeah, go for it. But I don't like this game.
Yeah, like I like the Spurs side of this game, but like I don't know, I could legitimately see Cleveland coming out and LeBron being like, "Screw you, Kevin Love, you sat out last game with like fake flu symptoms or whatever. I'm not even giving you the ball. Like it's mine. It's all mine today." There is the whole LeBron narrative. What is he like? Needs 7 points, become the seventh player in NBA history to reach 30,000 career points. Obviously, he's going to hit that tonight. But interestingly enough, he also is 19 field goals away from surpassing Dirk Nowitzki for 8th all-time in league history. So who knows? Maybe he's going to go out and chase that narrative. Like, it's going to happen eventually. Just maybe he wants to get it tonight. I don't know. So
I need to check something here, because if they play the Mavs in the next few days, he could just kind of wait.
He could. Let me see. Cleveland. I know they don't play tomorrow. I doubt they. Well, they might actually play the Mavs soon.
No, they're back at home and play the Pacers. I thought they were like a little Texas, playing both teams here, but no.
Yeah. So who knows? Like, there's people that they plug in players strictly because of narratives at times. So if you want to ride the narrative, go for it. But again, LeBron's fine if you want to. But my interest in this game comes from the San Antonio side.
Yep, me too. I'll start here. Obviously LaMarcus Aldridge once again leads the offense with Kawhi off the court. Minutes are going to be there. Usage is going to be there. It's a great spot. We've seen the Cavs really struggle against power forwards. Once again, like, he's a little bit more pricey on FanDuel. I still think he's viable there, even at 9,500. Probably he's the cash game option out of the Draymond Green, Porzingis, Aaron Gordon crowd.
Yeah, when you were narrowing down positions that the Cavs have struggled against, you could have just like left power forwards off. Like, they have struggled against every position. Like, their defensive efficiency of the last 10 games against centers 28, power forwards 19, small forwards 27, shooting guards 24, point guards 29. The struggle bus is like parked in Cleveland right now. Yeah, you're looking at LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, he's probably, outside of like De'Aaron Fox and Russell Westbrook, like the quote unquote safest plays of the night, given the usage that he's going to have with no Pau Gasol, no Manu, no Kawhi, no Rudy Gay. So yeah, I absolutely love him. I'm not fading him in any format. I don't care what his price is. Outside of him, like, you're looking at DeJounte Murray, who came out last game, started over Tony Parker, played outstanding. He's been really, really solid of late. He's a guy I think has a decent amount of upside here, and is a great cash game option. People might flock to Patty Mills in the spot. I would warn against that if you're building like one lineup or even five lineups. Like we've talked about it before, Mills has come out and stated how much he's struggling to adjust to kind of his new role. And if like Tony Parker does play, like that's probably going to eat into Patty Mills' production. So not a lot of interest in Mills here. I'm sticking with Murray and again, just eating the chalk there.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite values on this slate. He's been doing a little bit of everything. He's been rebounding really well. It kind of gives him a helpful floor because he's not obviously scoring a ton, but steals can be there, rebounds can be there. We look at this Cavs team; they do allow a hefty amount of rebounds to guards. Just one because they're not the same rebounding team they have been in the past. Once again, lack of effort on this side, not a lot of focus. Like it leads to those things, and that's why targeting some of these secondary guys against the Cavs has just been so promising. So I don't mind him. Kyle Anderson's getting a little bit up in price. I still don't mind him. 5,600 on DraftKings is decent. He is 6,200. I'm a little bit off of him with Ingram and Jaylen Brown cheaper.
Yeah, but like I think he's safer out of those two guys. Like I think he has the safer floor out of both of those two players that you mentioned. He's a fine option. I definitely don't mind going there. Obviously, don't expect him to come out and rack up 5 steals again tonight. But we're talking about a guy that's been over 30 fantasy points in back-to-back games. Has been rebounding a little bit more. Assists are there. Has 3 blocks in back-to-back games. So he's a fine option here. Davis Bertans is my guy tonight with no Pau Gasol. You expect him to get a little bit of extended run. No Manu in that second unit means a little more usage goes his way. He's very, very cheap across the industry. He's part of my core Spurs stack here.
Yeah, don't mind him. I'm not doing Danny Green. If anyone's looking to do Danny Green, I'm off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, like he's a guy like he's still playing through that groin injury, I think, and it's really affected his shooting. Like if you just look at it over the last 3 games, he's been below 35% shooting. I think again the groin injury is really, really bothering him. So I would stick to Murray, Bertans, Anderson, and LaMarcus here.
Yep. Brooklyn, OKC next. OKC favored by 10, 213 over under. I know you and I both are looking at Rondé Hollis-Jefferson here. Really nice price tag on him. He's just been really consistent. I mean, averaging 20 fantasy points over his last 5. Had a great game against the Thunder last time out as well.
Yeah, he's a guy I do have interest in tournaments here again. Not so in that I think I'm using in cash. I think there's just safer options here, but he's coming off a near triple-double against Detroit. He's a guy that's actually produced in tough matchups here. Like if you remember back against Toronto, the dude pulled down 17 rebounds against the Raptors. It is a decent spot against an Oklahoma City team that has struggled at times against power forwards, and that's to be expected when you're using Carmelo Anthony in the post to defend. He is a guy that likes to post up a decent amount. I think his rebounding might be hindered a little bit tonight with Steven Adams down there in the paint gobbling up rebounds, but I feel like he has a decent amount of upside in this matchup, and he's pretty much the only member of the Nets that I really have that much interest in.
Yeah, he's the only one for me. I'm not looking to use like DeMarre Carroll or any of the real guards right now. It's just a little bit of a mess, and it's just not that great of a spot either.
Yeah, no, it's a really bad spot for Carroll, who's just probably going to spend most of his time matched up with Paul George, who is an elite defender this season. If you want to roll him out in cash games, like I think he's fine. But I just don't see a lot of upside here. And the rest of the guards, like Karis LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, like these guys are going to have to spend some time adjusting to D'Angelo Russell being back. So like he hurts all those guys. So like I would rather look elsewhere at those prices. Like there's just not a ton of guys. Like I just don't want to deal with the volatility of the Joe Harris and Alan Krabs and all these guys.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's look at the OKC side of things. Obviously, we'll start with Westbrook, who I think you can obviously certainly pay up for tonight. Like out of the pay up options, I think he's your safest one to kind of go around. Like that's kind of what I was like him over LeBron here if I'm paying up over 10K.
I mean, he's the safest option on the board, and he's also the highest upside option on the board. If you want to use him, go for it. Like there's no overwhelming argument. There's never an overwhelming argument to use Westbrook. He's one of the highest ceiling players in the NBA and one of the safest floors in the NBA. So if you want to roll him out there, go for it.
Yep. And then we look at it like Paul George here and Carmelo. I kind of like Carmelo here a little bit more just because he's a little bit cheaper. I think both these guys are very much in play in all formats for me, just because like if you want to go a balanced approach for guys that are going to have a 30 fantasy point floor and can get you upwards between 40 and 45, like these are two guys.
Yeah, like I think Paul George is an interesting pivot off some of the other guys that are going to be a little bit popular, especially if you're looking on FanDuel, where small forward is just gross, like really, really, really gross. So I do like him a little bit more over there. You're locking in a guy that you should feel pretty comfortable in him getting 40 fantasy points in this matchup. I know at 8K that it's not a great return on his salary, but I will take that any day. I do like Carmelo Anthony here. He's coming off a huge game. He's getting rolling. Like he's finally found his groove in this offense. They've talked about like his rebounding. His rebounding has been outstanding. 3 of the last 4 games, 10, 9, and 10 rebounds against a Brooklyn team that struggles to rebound. I think he has plenty of upside here. And then I wrote up Steven Adams in the GPP article. Like I know his price is elevated, but we're talking about a guy that could get you well over 40 fantasy points tonight in this matchup. So I like Melo, I like Adams and Westbrook, and then I do kind of like Paul George as a secondary option.
Yeah, I do too. I say this with a little bit of pain in my heart, but I don't hate Andre Roberson tonight as a punt at shooting guard or small forward for 4K. He's been over 20 fantasy points in each of his last 5 games. I think against this spot, like he's a guy who's obviously not going to score, but defensive stats can be there. He's another guy that can rebound as well. If you're going stars and scrubs, like I don't think he's the worst option.
Yeah, you can consider him on DraftKings. You can't use him on FanDuel at 4,800.
God, no. That's it. That's it from OKC as always. New York and Golden State, this next one. This is a weird game here. Golden State favored by 14. I think this is actually going to be a game that can be a pretty big decider in GPPs tonight if you can nail the right guys.
Yeah, it comes down to predicting how this game is going to play out. Like, I hate trying to predict blowouts, but there is a really good chance this game gets out of hand quickly. The Knicks are terrible on the road this season. From the New York side of things, like I do have a little bit of interest in a couple of these guys tonight. And it basically is the bench guys. Like if you want to try to predict the blowout here, you can feel pretty comfortable in rolling someone like Michael Beasley, who, what does he have? He's averaging 17 points per game over the last 4 games in a decent spot here, a fast-paced game where he can kind of just get out and run and chuck. Like I think he's an excellent tournament option. The other guy, and I wrote him up in the tournament article, and I noted in there that this is it's very thin. Like this is very, very thin here. I do want to preface this, but Kyle O'Quinn is a little bit interesting at his price in a game where where the Knicks are facing an opponent that tends to go small. They could use KP at the 5. They could use Beasley at the 4. They could use KP at the 4 and use Kyle O'Quinn at the 5. And if he gets you 20, 22 minutes, he's a dude that averages like 1.14 fantasy points per minute, and he's in an excellent matchup. So I think there's a path to Kyle O'Quinn coming out and putting up like 24, 25 fantasy points in that 3,900, 3,700, something like that across the industry. He's not the worst punt option on the slate.
No, games where he's played over 20 minutes over his last 4, he scored 27, 21, 22, and 38. So, I mean, there's definitely a range of outcomes there where you're going to get 15 minutes pretty much regardless. You know, if he can get up into those lower 20s, that's kind of where he starts to make his mark.
Yeah, and even at 15 minutes, like at over a fantasy point per minute, like he could still get you 20 fantasy points in 15 minutes. And again, at 3,700, it's not a terrible return on that price.
Oh. Does that mean you're kind of off of Cantor?
If you're building multiple lineups, you could take a shot here, but like again, he's facing a team that tends to go small. He could get played off the floor pretty quickly. So I don't know. Like you're definitely not using him in cash games, and like if you're just building one tournament lineup, you're definitely not using him there. But multiple lineups, you could take a shot.
That's kind of how I feel with all these Knicks guys. Like, you know, if you're building multiple lineups, you can get GPP exposure through the bench and the starters. Like, if you want to take a shot on Tim Hardaway, it's not a great spot, but obviously the usage attempts are going to be there. And if this game stays close, it's because Porzingis and Hardaway are doing well, or it's just the Warriors come out and play down to the Knicks level, which that's also something that we have seen this year as well. Like the Warriors will keep it close until the third, and then all of a sudden they're up by 20.
Yeah, well, it's generally what happens, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but like coming out of the half in third quarters, the Golden State Warriors are outscoring opponents like 400 and something to like 3. It's pretty darn close to that. Like they're just massively outscoring opponents in the third quarter. So Zach Randolph is questionable with a knee injury, not rest, but knee injury.
He's not playing.
So yeah, but yeah, they just massively outscore opponents in the third quarter. So yeah, everybody from the Knicks side is tournament viable, and I wouldn't touch any of them in cash games.
No. And on the Warriors side, there's two guys that I kind of want to give my exposure to a little bit more. And that's Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, just because they are the cheaper options from this one. And I think Klay Thompson a little bit more so because the position is fairly weak tonight. Like you look at shooting guard, especially on FanDuel, like I think you can kind of just lock him in at 6,800. Like that's a pretty fair price for a guy who's probably going to get around 30 fantasy points tonight. Good spot against this Knicks team. Thompson, Draymond Green, even though it's not a favorable spot, like Draymond's still a guy who's going to go out there and probably get around 35, 40. And if you want a little bit cheaper than Aldridge on FanDuel, like I don't mind going that route.
Yeah, he's fine. Klay and Draymond are two guys that generally do play later into the games, even in blowouts, so you can feel a little bit more comfortable there in minutes. Or Draymond's a guy who contributes in every statistical category, which definitely helps his floor. And he's a guy that's been over 40 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. So it is a solid matchup for him. Knicks really have struggled in the paint of late. So I do think if you're wanting to get exposure to both those guys are fine options. I don't necessarily mind Curry, who could just come out and just torch the Knicks in the spot. So if you wanted to take a flyer on him, go for it. I think I would rank it Green, Klay, Curry, and then Durant.
Yeah, like Durant and Curry are kind of just, I don't mind them in cash, but like I see them as more as just kind of getting some exposure to GPPs just in case they have that huge ceiling game. Because otherwise, I think they could kind of top out about 40, 45 fantasy points, which at their prices, it's not doing me much.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyone off the bench here for the Warriors?
No.
Yeah, there's not a lot. It's guys that probably will get like 15 minutes of run, but are kind of just going to get you around 15 fantasy points.
They just have too many guys. I mean, it's just like they have Livingston, they have McCall, they have Nick Young, they have Iguodala, they have David West. They just have too many guys.
Yeah. Last game of the night here, Boston and LA. Boston favored by 5. Boston in a little bit of a rut right now. Offense hasn't been looking great. It obviously hasn't been totally great this year, but this is a spot where obviously I think they can come out and kind of increase their ceilings a little bit here with some of these guys that are in the 5K range, because really outside of Horford and Kyrie, like the Brown prices, the Tatum prices, the Marcus Morris prices are all fairly nice for guys that do have 30 plus fantasy point upside in the spot.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, like I'm looking at this game and it's really tough for me to find anyone that I'm absolutely in love with. Like if you wanted to play Kyrie, go for it. Came out last game, returned from that shoulder injury, had a huge game against the Orlando Magic. It is interesting to note Lakers defense has been pretty solid recently, 12th in defensive efficiency against point guards. If you wanted to get exposure to this game, though, I think Kyrie is a fine option. I think Marcus Morris is one guy that I'm looking at just because he's really cheap, and he's a guy that you can feel pretty comfortable in getting you like 24 to 28 fantasy points. The rest of the guys are just guys for me. Like they're not anyone that I'm overly like optimistic about putting in my lineups, but if they fit, they fit.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I'm kind of looking. It's like, oh, if Tatum's my last piece, if Jaylen Brown's my last piece, and I'm kind of going that way, like I know they're going to get me around 25 fantasy points as kind of a floor here. The Celtics just don't offer that much of upside. Like Irving's shown the upside, twice this year? We've seen upside out of Irving maybe 3 times. Like that's about it for him. And Horford's a guy who I like to say as a safe floor, but there's some times where he just does go missing in games.
Yeah, and I mean, look, he's historically been really good against the Brook Lopez. Like, I don't have it pulled up on StatMuse, but he has historically been really good against Brook Lopez. So if you want to use him, go for it. But like, again, you mentioned it. None of these guys have like massive ceilings here. They're all just kind of guys that are going to come out and get you, a solid return on their prices. They're just guys. Like, I would rather get exposure other places.
Yeah. As you said, Marcus Morris and Irving are probably the two better options from this team.
Yeah, I think those are the two best options to look at.
On the Lakers side, obviously we're still dealing with Lonzo Ball out, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope questionable. Looks like they're going to have a fully healthy front court. We've all kind of been dealing with game time decisions of late, but I don't necessarily worry about the defense here for Clarkson, just given his usage and how he's been playing of late, especially on FanDuel where he's shooting guard, he's 7K. Like, I still think obviously Clarkson can lead the way here, even in this spot.
Yeah, I want to wait and see if we get news about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope before I would lock him in. That being said, dude's been over 50 fantasy points in back-to-back games. If KCP sits out, you would expect him to get significant run. 19 field goal attempts in back-to-back games. He's facing a Boston defense that he played pretty well against last time they faced off. 27 minutes, 30 fantasy points. I would definitely have a lot of interest in him as a safer option if KCP sits this game out. I know his price is ridiculous on FanDuel. It's pretty high on DraftKings as well, but he's a guy that I would have a decent amount of interest in. Outside of him, Randall feels like the safest option from the front court. Like, he's, playing really, really well recently. Minutes are up and down. Like, we've seen 22, 23, 20, 37. That being said, when he's out there, he's putting up a bunch of shots. He's crashing the glass, getting some rebound or getting some assists and some blocks and steals as well. Like, he feels like the safest option here. And we've seen Boston at times this season kind of get beat up down low. So I think it's Clarkson and Randall that you're really looking at here. And then the rest of the guys just kind of eat into each other.
Yeah, we've seen one of the things that we liked about Ingram in the past was the fact that he was playing 38 minutes a game. That's not the case anymore because I think obviously he is injured. We've seen Larry Nance sneak into the rotation again. If you want to take a flyer on Larry Nance, I don't hate it at 5K, just given the fact that his minutes actually have been fairly solid and he's been playing pretty well. But I still think that could obviously disappear at any moment. So he's going to be just a guy out playing GPPs.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, with these Ingram minutes, a lot of it is because of the injury, and a lot of it is because of blowouts. He retweaked that ankle in the Oklahoma City game, and they were down pretty heavily, so he didn't come back in. The Knicks game was a massive blowout as well. So, I think his minutes were pretty limited because of those two situations. They may end up going back up, and if you wanted to take a shot on him, you could. Both those guys are listed as probable, I believe. Again, just wait and see what news comes out from shoot around, because we have seen a lot of, these guys that are probable be, downgraded or ruled out. So kind of just have to keep an eye on that.
Yep. No, I agree. Randall, by far the best front court option from the Lakers side.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's going to wrap it up for us. Let's see, what do you want to do tonight? Let's go best points per dollar value.
Kyle O'Quinn.
All right.
I cock blocked you on that one.
Give me Scal since he's 4,400 and Randolph could potentially be out tonight.
There you go. I dig it.
That's going to wrap it up for us. You can head over to datafantasycafe.com, check out Brent's article, GPPs, Optimizer as well, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Good luck.